Relative deprivation. This was a term coined by the sociologist Samuel Stouffer during the Second World War. Stouffer was commissioned by the U.S. Army to examine the attitudes and morale of American soldiers, and he ended up studying 500,000 men and women, looking at everything from how soldiers viewed their commanding officers, so I'm just reading from here, to how black soldiers felt they were being treated, to how difficult soldiers found it to serve in isolated outposts. So essentially what happened was, at the end of the study, Stouffer concluded that we form our impressions not globally, but placing ourselves in the broadest possible context, so locally, by comparing ourselves to people in the same boat as ourselves. If you are depressed in a place where most people are pretty unhappy, you compare yourself to those around you. So this is the group community effect. And you don't feel all that bad. But can you imagine how difficult it must be to be depressed in a country where everyone else has a big smile on their face? Some of these sources come from, there is a book called Happiness Around the World, The Paradox of Happy Peasants and Miserable Millionaires, right? We know those stories, and why there is that saying, money doesn't buy us happiness, because happiness is a link to those things. There's things like inner fulfillment, and also depending on how you're comparing yourself. Are you comparing yourself to just previous versions of yourself, or are you comparing yourself to your peers? And if so, why? Why does it matter? Why do the opinions of others matter? This relative deprivation definitely has a lot of effect in groups, from small to large, and it isn't always clear as to the number or the size, but it is a reason as to why it's important to surround yourself with good people who will challenge you, but I think challenge you enough, because I think there is a point also where if something feels too unbearable or too far out, a person, well, yes, of course they can be broken, and even if they're good. So that's sort of stuff to think about, because in terms of the long term, I think a lot of people, there's a lot of potential that is dropped as a result of making these type of choices. All right. So with that, keep that in mind. Relative deprivation was the lesson for today. And remember, through patience and persistence, it will come.